So I realized that you're going to be seeing this out of sequence. I've already started working on this, but I need to introduce this before we start the video. This is a Dynahoe, high dynamic Dynahoe. This was a much different backhoe than ones available in the day. Most of the ones available in this era were farm tractors with a front end loader and then a backhoe attachment added onto them. This company made a more specialized backhoe, very heavy. These things started like 14,000, 15,000 pounds, and there's specific things about it that that made it better than the traditional farm tractor with a front end loader attachment and a 3-point backhoe. One was the fact that this one in particular has a much longer digging depth. This model in particular has the leveling cylinders for the bucket, so when you lift the bucket it keeps it at the same pitch, if you will. But this thing had been sitting for quite some time. There's a hole in the top of the exhaust. Rainwater had been going into it, and the engine was locked up. And we knew the engine was locked up because they tried to get it started. They tried this, tried that, and what have you, and they gave up on it, which is how I came about it. It is from what we believe, is a mid-70s. There's a tag on the dash which you can't read, which has the model number on it. All we can read is a C. We believe it's a 70s, and because it's got the leveling on there, we believe it's a 140 or 160, which means it either digs 14 feet deep or 16 feet deep, one or the other, which is kind of a big deal for a backhoe because a lot of them didn't go very deep. Anyways, that's the introduction of it. I've already started working on it, so I guess we'll get into the video. Alright, so this is a 2-stroke Detroit 353, and it's supposed to be stuck. So I drained the oil and I took the exhaust manifold off so that I could see which cylinders the valves were open, because it sat for a long time with a vertical exhaust and no rain cap, and the water got down inside it and obviously rusted the piston rings to the liner. So what I found was I sprayed PB Blaster in each one of the ports where the valves are, and this one would build up in PB Blaster, and so would this one, but the center one wouldn't. So that's the one that's open, and I've drained the oil already, as you saw. And what I've been doing is every couple days I'm coming in here and I'm just taking a full can of PB Blaster and I'm spraying it back and forth in these valves. And what I'm trying to do is work that blaster down the cylinder, and then after it's sat for a while, I'm going to try and get on the crank down here and see if I can turn the engine rocket back and forth and break things loose. That doesn't mean I'm going to start it up and run it the way it is. It just means I want to know if I can start it. That would be great, so I could tell the condition of everything else. It has coolant in it. Believe it or not, the oil didn't have any water in it, so it must have sealed pretty well here. Either that or it's really, really rusted on the rings of the sleeve, one or the other. But like I said, there was no water in the oil. The oil was just dirty and smelled like starting fluid. So I'm going to continue to do this, and then once I think we've made some progress, I'll know, because there was no water in the oil So if we get PB Blaster down in the oil, which was the purpose of draining it to see if there was water in it, plus I'll be able to know when the PB Blaster has worked past the rings into the oil, because when I open that drain plug up again, we should be able to see PB Blaster. And once we see the PB Blaster, that's when we're going to try and rock it back and forth and see if it'll come free. Put a mark down here on the pulley on the bottom. Now I'm going to put this pipe wrench on the crank and on here and see if we can get it to roll over. I've got PB Blaster coming down through the oil pan now. So I'm going to see if I can. See if it'll move. It's pretty tight. Can't get the pipe wrench in there good. Come on. I don't know if you can see that, but it is moving. Just little by little. May have bent the pipe wrench just a skosh. Oh yeah. Pipe wrench just isn't quite big enough for this piece. I need to make sure it'll rotate 360. Pipe on crap here. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and make sure to rotate 360 and then we'll go from there. Alright, so it's made a complete 360-degree revolution. And why that's important is we want to make sure there's nothing obstructing this, like a broken rod or pieces of the engine down inside that it would stop it from rotating. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm not dealing with these crappy top post battery cables. So I'm going to remove these, and I've got this huge, this is a 4-aught cable. We're going to use it, and it's got the stud post eyelet on it. I'm going to put it on the positive, and then I'm going to go get another one for the negative, and we're going to use group 31 batteries on it. So that's what I'm on next. I got to take it loose from the starter down there, which the starter looks like it's been replaced recently, so I hope that's the case. This is where the ground goes. Replacing that cable. This is it's actually a welding cable. It actually says welding cable on it. It's not 4-aught. This is probably number 2 copper. And what we're going to do is put a serrated washer under it, a lock washer on top, and then the original bolt. The lock washer that was on it was broken into pieces. You can see it here. It wasn't even tight. So that's a pretty tight hole there. I drilled it just a smidge bigger than 3/8, but I guess I could have went a little more. All right. Alright, so cleaned up that machine surface so that when I put this on, the serrated washer is going to bite into that cast iron. It's not as big as the 4/0 that I'm using. I'm using that 4/0 because I have it. And it was about the right length. Alright. Okay. Alright, I think for now, I'm not going to cut this. I'm just going to leave it long and run this one up to the negative once we put a battery in. So I'm going to grab a group 31. I'm going to set it up in here. I'll hook the positive up but not the negative so it doesn't start, if the starter's stuck and the switch is stuck, it doesn't start cranking off on its own. So now I got to get the intake off. This is a really interesting intake. Look at this filter. That's like a pre-filter.
Oh wow.
And that's something.
It's got a new filter. That's good.
Yeah. So anyways, I need to take this filter box off and get down here to just above the blower. So if it does try to run away, I can smother it out. So I gotta get this off next. Alright, I got the intake off, air cleaner. Now I'm gonna put this rag over the inlet with this hose clamp so I don't drop any tools or nuts and bolts down in there. Now it's time to clean all the way around the valve cover, get all the crud out of there so when I lift it off it didn't fall on the motor. Let's get that out of here. Get all the bolts out of the valve cover. Now I'm ready to pop it open. All the retaining bolts were loose. Like the other side were Phillips and straight screwdriver, and this side was 1/2-inch bolts. Ooh, look at that rust.
Yeah.
Yummy. Yummy. Yuck. Huh. It's got rebuilt injectors in it. Wow. Oh, that would have sucked. Oh, look at that. You see the injectors moving? They were stuck.
No, where?
These are the plungers for the injectors. Okay? And they were like here, and I went to give it some throttle and it was stuck. Stuck. But now it moves free. That's good. That's a good sign. I don't like all this, man. Look at all this. Which, you know, this is part of the fact that the valves were open, which is ironic because this exhaust valve was not open. Here, this one was. And this one has less rust than that one. But regardless, it's been sitting. That's why it's got the green funk all over it. They drug it out of the woods.
It don't take stuff too long to get the green funk.
No, but you can see the condensation all over it. But man, look at that. That's great. And they'll go in all the way. Alright, so now I'm going to get my brass punch and I'm going to try and tap all of our injector springs here. Eesh. And all the exhaust valves and make sure they are not stuck also. That's the injector, exhaust valve. All of these are going to be exhaust because this is a 2-stroke. If you're not familiar with a 2-stroke, ooh, that one's stuck. Look at that.
Let me go around to the other side because your hand's in the way.
Alright, so if you're not familiar with a 2-stroke and how they work, everything you see here, can you see these bridges here? These are just exhaust valves. every cylinder has 4 exhaust valves. It gets air through this blower right here. See this thing down here? Below this red thing? It's gear-driven blower down here. So it sucks air in through here. The blower pressurizes it and suns it inside the block. And then when the piston comes down far enough, it gets down below these holes that are all the way around the sleeve of the cylinder. When it gets down below there, all that pressurized air enters the chamber. The piston starts to come back up. It injects fuel, atomizes, compresses, explodes, exhaust stroke. You know, that's why it's a 2-stroke and not a 4. So this doesn't have any intake valves. It just has exhaust, and that's why. And this is a cylinder that was stuck open, so I need to take special care to make sure we can be comfortable. These valves, they may not seat at first because they were open, and the seat, the actual part that seals against the head, is probably all pitted and rusty. And we still may have to take this motor apart and do a valve job and all that kind of stuff, but at least if we can get it running, we can tell what else it's going to need to make sure it doesn't have an overheating problem, or we can also make sure that the hydraulic pump works, the transmission works, because after all, this is a backhoe. Yeah, you see how this one, can you see down in here? See if you can look down through here. You see this spring there? Right down in here.
I don't think so.
These springs are jumping right back. This one was closed. This cylinder was closed. So that those valves are springing right back. These ones are the ones that were open, and they're not coming back as quickly. They don't bounce back tight and give you that same sound. See if you can pay attention to what it sounds like here. So these ones, the guides, being this valve was stuck down for a while, there's probably some crud on the valve itself that's making it stick inside the guide. But you know, it looks like they will come back up. We just got to work them a little bit. We'll just keep working them for a while until we're happy. And there's a bridge here, so as you push down on one, it lifts on the other, or it lets tension off, I should say. It doesn't actually lift. Yeah, I assume when this starts, it's not going to be a smooth running engine. I expect it to smoke like mad. One, because I sprayed a ton of PB. I got 3 full cans of PB Blaster in this thing. All the injectors are free. Okay. Now, our next step is the fuel system. You know, we've got this where we're happy with it, but if you notice, it doesn't come back all the way. So we got to be mindful of that when we start. Yeah, this has got rebuilt injectors. That's pretty interesting. Wouldn't have guessed that. Wonder if I can get serial numbers off that and call the company and see when they were rebuilt. Give me an idea of when they were put in there. Okay, next is the fuel system. I need to quit putting my hair in that gross grease there. Yummy. That's why I look like a hobo every day. So next is a fuel system. Just so we all know, these bars right here, this is how I got this thing on my head, which is why I wrapped a rag around there. I've run my head into it. That's probably the 6th or 7th time now.
Shouldn't do that. Shouldn't do that.
Well, I'd like not to. I hate taking these old filter bases loose, because if it cracks or whatever, you're kind of in I mean, you can still get a lot of parts for these things, but it's just a big delay. And you know how much I love delays. That fuel don't look bad.
No. Doesn't really smell bad.
Ooh, look at that crud coming out. Ugh.
Oh my.
Yeah, there's a lot more crud than we thought.
Yes.
Well, it's a USA filter. Made in USA.
Hmm.
Look at that. Well, guess the writing's on the wall there. We're getting us a new filter. Ugh. Alright. Well, might as well get the other one off. Look at that crap. You know, it's a backhoe. I'll tell you what, I would much rather have off-road diesel on my skin than regular diesel than on-road. I don't know what it is about that on-road diesel. I just hate it.
This doesn't seem to stink as bad. I don't know. It's my imagination.
The fuel doesn't look bad.
No.
I mean, it's not horrible.
That filter don't have a lot of junk in it.
Yeah, why would one have crud in it? Oh, it's been replaced before that one, or after it, or either. Because this one's a Wix. Look at that, there's nothing.
Yeah.
So someone's probably replaced this filter and not the secondary. Alright, I'm going to get cleaned up. I'm going to clean them filter housings up. I'm going to get some filters.
Well, I'm not doubting you, but I don't think it's going to start. Just because it's so crusty.
I don't know. That rust ain't that big of a deal.
Well, I wasn't sure that
It
Kenworth was going to start, and it did, so.
It rolled over 360 degrees, so the rotating mass is okay. So let's get some oil.
Okay.
Let's see what we got now. Nothing? Oh yeah. Alright, let's get us some oil.
Okay.
I got my remote start button here. It's on the starter solenoid, and that's all we can get. I've got jumper cables off my great all with a good battery, and if I put them on the starter motor, man, I barely get a draw. And I've messed with the ground, and it's no different. It makes no difference whatsoever. Leads me to believe they tried and cooked this starter. That's what I believe. The motor was stuck, and they just kept trying with that starter until it didn't do anything. So our next thing is we're gonna have to take starter out. I got the starter out. We got our jumper cables on the great all, which got a really good battery in it. And if this starter was a good starter, when we put this on, it would have a very large spark because it's a large amperage draw. It's barely got anything, and I can hit the thing. I chose this one because this side, because I can get a good bite on it, but it doesn't do anything. I mean, it's such a, look, nothing now. So before we can go any farther, we got to get a starter. So that's next. We'll drop this off and see if they can fix it, because it's not that old. I mean, there's still remnants of a sticker here. It's been painted black. You know, it's been gone through one time, but I guess it needs it again. So I do what I always do. I start looking for identifying marks, tags, anything, stamp numbers, and I take that and I Google it. I take that number, I Google it, and I try and match that by application, by fitment. And usually I can come up with something. Well, I didn't come up with a lot. So I did find this place called Starter Superstore, and they're out of Connecticut. And they had an interchange where I could put that on there. And I went on their website, and I tried to put it in my cart, and there was a problem. It wouldn't add it to your cart and let you check out. Something was going wrong there. So I called the folks. Real nice guy answered the phone. I told him what I had. I gave him the numbers off of it. He says, yeah, we got it right here. Got it in stock. When I talked to him on the phone, it was the same price as what the internet said. I didn't have to haggle. I didn't have to, make sure we're not getting screwed over here. He's like, yep, we got free shipping, so I can have that out. You'll have it in 2 days. I said, fantastic, ship it. So it shows up, and unfortunately, it's not right. I mean, this one's got 5/8 bolt holes. That's got 3/8, right? This is over 5 inches wide. This is only 4 inches wide. The bolt pattern is completely wrong. The size of the gear drive is completely wrong. The number of teeth is, I don't know, I think it's off too. But I called him. I said, hey, listen, it's not right, such, so on and so forth. He says, He says, I'll tell you what. He says, well, give me these measurements, count the teeth, blah, blah, blah. Give me this measurement and so on and so forth. And let me call Prestolite, Leeds Neville, and I'll see what I can find out for you. Okay. 10 minutes later, he calls me back. He says, okay, not a problem. We have it in stock, and it is $3 cheaper than this one. He says, and it is the correct. They matched it by application and by the measurements that I gave him. And it's still going to be a gear reduction soft starter, which if you don't know anything about that, that means we spin better, faster, lower amps, and it's easy. The slow start is much easier on the starter, and you can't believe how much lighter the two are. So anyways, he tells me, he says, if you want it, what we'll do is we'll charge you for the new one. We'll send it to you, and we'll go ahead and send you a shipping label to return this one. Now, I have to pay for the return shipping, which I have no problem with that, because this mistake wasn't their mistake. This is just the fact that we're dealing with old stuff that's pieces, parts put together and isn't what it's supposed to be. But I got to tell you, those people were more than accommodating. He didn't try to push blame like so many companies do. They want to establish blame before they get into the problem that you have at hand. He was a true professional. He's like, well, let's see what I can do to get you set up. So if you guys need a starter, I suggest you give them a shot, because not only did they have great prices and free shipping, because let's be real here, when you're shipping something as heavy as these, it gets a little costly. And this had to come from Connecticut to Ohio. So anyways, if you need a starter, maybe we'll check them out.